When you think of the most ambitious movies ever made, there's the usual suspects that spring to mind. King Kong with its groundbreaking effects work and scale. Citizen Kane with its dramatic cinematography and editing. There's 2001, Ben-Hur, Avatar, Toy Story, Lord of the Rings, Metropolis. The list is vast. There were films like Birth of a Nation in 1915, which was groundbreaking in terms of technical achievement, but over time has become seen as merely a well-produced stain on history. Yes, it will be studied for years and every modern movie owes a lot to its innovations, but unpackaging its contents, you don't find much that you'd want to revisit or will stir up debate beyond, damn, America was racist. It pretty much universally drums up disgust as much as it has respect, and only film buffs have even heard of it nowadays. However, there's one movie I don't hear much recognition for that I want to toss into this category. And unlike Birth of a Nation, I can't think of any reasons why it doesn't get that recognition. First of all, you're probably asking yourself, how on earth do you pronounce its name? I've heard so many variations over the years. Häxan, Häxan, Turner Classic Movies pronounces it Häxan.
From director Benjamin Christensen, it's Häxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages.
To put this to rest, I've scoured everywhere, and in its native Swedish, it's pronounced Häxan.
Häxan. Häxan.
In Danish, it's Häxan, and many people use it this way, but for the sake of this video, I will be pronouncing it Häxan, since it's the Swedish pronunciation, and it's a Swedish movie. Kind of. The director's Danish, it was shot in Denmark, but everything else surrounding it screams Sweden. Horky Borky! And in case you're wondering, Häxan means the witch. The film is from 1922, making it 101 years old at the time of this video. Over an entire century. This makes it not only an ancient time capsule, but it's a miracle we're seeing it at all. I think many people don't realise that movies from these early eras are exceedingly rare. Back then, film was seen more as a curious novelty than the true art form of today. After a film's initial run, it wasn't seen as valuable anymore. If it was a silent film, even less so once sound became a thing. Loud noises! It was like theatre plays. You have a run of shows, then at the end it stops and the next show gets put to work. Film is expensive and storing it is a cost the studios didn't need. So, reels were intentionally destroyed, recycled, or victims of accidents. Film back then was highly flammable and damaged easily, so it wasn't uncommon. There's scores of vault fires that wiped away a lot of history and creative effort overnight. The Library of Congress estimates about 75% of all silent films are lost forever. Take an example such as Nosferatu, which, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't even be here anymore. Bram Stoker's widow won a court case for plagiarism and the courts ordered all copies destroyed. Obviously this didn't happen, but imagine if they were. A masterpiece of horror gone never to be seen again, and its influence on the genre never fell across time. Take Lon Chaney, man of 1,000 faces and one of the most iconic horror actors of all time. He made 157 films in his lifetime. Only 55 of them survive today. 102 movies vanished from existence. Just a curiosity of the past that survives as text in listings, posters, or set photos. So the fact we're able to view these today is something we should always be grateful for. Yes, they're primitive, they lack sound, some aren't in the best shape even now, but that doesn't diminish the quality of their content or remove the imagination they contain. Some might have a lot to say that's relevant today if you take the time to hear them out. With that said, let's talk about Häxan. Häxan's ambition not only comes from its huge production, but more so its narrative style. It's not a straightforward plot. It's part documentary, part dramatic story, and part avant-garde horror. It contains scenes of torture, nudity, criticism of religion, promotion of the abuse of women's mental health. 1922, people! I'm surprised the Earth wasn't knocked out of orbit with the size of this movie's gigantic balls when it dropped. The Experience was directed by Benjamin Christensen and took 2 years of production to make. It's cut into 7 parts, all designed to look into the history of mysticism and all that encapsulates the what, when, why and how of witchcraft across time. From a 1922 perspective, of course. It's a silent movie, so all the dialogue, key information and occasionally plot points are dictated to us via intertitle cards. Through our modern eyes, this can make things a bit cumbersome to fully follow. We just aren't used to it. But you have to remember, back then, this was the norm. It forces you to pay close attention to body language and really take in the imagery in order to get a grip on what's happening, since these title cards can be spread far at points and only give you a basic understanding of some scenes. It also leaves some parts up to interpretation. For instance, we follow a woman in a disgusting kitchen. All the title card states is, "Through imagination, we now journey to the underground home of a witch." We see her hobble around, take massive swigs from a bottle, and attend to various deeds.
Curious. Very curious.
The frame rate can make it appear like she's moving erratically, like most movies from this period, but it just takes a keen eye to get used to the more jittery movement, and you'll be able to establish what's going down. The amount of information this movie packs into 1 hour and 45 minutes is pretty damn staggering. Christensen seriously did his homework. The movie states directly it was produced over 2 years, but in reality it took even longer to gain all the respective research for it. As I say, the movie is split into 7 chapters, with chapter 1 essentially being a slideshow you'd be shown in university, right down to referencing sources. The opening chapter goes over the history of middle-aged beliefs that tie into witchcraft, but the visuals and the way it flows somehow makes it entrancing. It's mostly static pictures, but then there's these marvellous presentations of the ideas discussed in giant moving props. One thing that took me by surprise is how mechanical all these beliefs in the past were. How the solar system is this big mechanized system, or even little things like the Egyptians believing the sky was held up by pillars. It shows you that yes, these primitive beings had crazy beliefs, but they were also semi-logical in how it all worked within the limits of nature. And that translates great onto moving picture as strange, otherworldly visuals. It gives you an idea of what witches, devils and demons are, what they do, and even has some funnier moments in there.
Oh my.
It's designed to settle you in nicely for what's to come with a 15-minute crash course in middle-aged witchcraft. Chapter 2 is where the movie kicks into proper storytelling. It shows us a collection of scattered vignettes involving witches and how they dealt with business. This section is to clue us into how they were seen and what superstitions were like at the time. For instance, one story shows a woman buying a love potion from a witch to seduce a monk. Oh, and in case anyone out there is wondering, a powerful love potion is made out of cat feces and dove hearts boiled during a full moon.
Finally, some good fucking food.
Nearly everyone featured in the film is grubby, rotten and flawed. You can make out every last weathered line on their faces. It's not a traditionally attractive cast is what I'm getting at, but that just adds to the world these stories encapsulate. A bygone era before hygiene and our own standards of beauty. Look at the woman and the monk she wants to fall in love with her. It's almost comical how madly attracted she is to, from what we can see, a horrific slob. She's so smitten. Due to the emulsion used when developing the film, the blue eyes of actors fail to show up in certain scenes, giving them the glazed, unnatural appearance. Almost like they're bewitched. It just adds yet another layer of creepiness to the proceedings. Another story follows 2 people who steal a dead body from a cemetery who want to cut it open to discover more about diseases ravaging the land. Now, there's many ways to interpret that line. Is it early scientists trying to find out more? Or are their motivations more sinister than that? We also get our first glimpse of the Big Daddy himself, the Devil. Benjamin Christensen plays the Devil himself, and it's a menacing interpretation. He's very turbulent in his movements and constantly sneering and snarling with his tongue always on show, just like the depictions of him in the beginning slideshow. But Satan himself appears in many ways. It explains he is found everywhere and in all things, just like God, and is described in both good and bad terms. It's definitely a characterization of old Beelzebub that stirs up debate. He taunts an old woman in her dreams with riches and fun she can never have, and that's just how the movie is for a good chunk. Imaginative little tales that gift you some knowledge, entertain you, and also make you think a little. I think now's a good time for me to say how damn gorgeous this movie is. The detail in the sets are remarkable. The Witch's Chamber especially stands out to me. There's just so much going on. Even little things in the background caught my eye. Like this thing. What the fuck is that? There's live animals, a dead body prop that looks suspiciously real. It's a fantastic looking movie even by today's standards. It was even released in 4K and it looks impeccable. Look at that shot. Look at that shot.
Holy shit, I'm gonna come.
The special effects too aren't as dated as you might expect. There's some really cool stop motion, it reverses the film, the makeup, costumes and props are spectacular, and there's a lot more hidden away within its runtime I won't ruin. It's a feast for the eyes, and for 1922 it's insane they pulled it all off. Remember, this is 11 years before King Kong or the Invisible Man's groundbreaking special effects work. Christensen wanted the actors to be influenced by a dark and ominous atmosphere, so shot almost all the movie at night, which is practically unheard of from films of this era. But it pays off in spades and everything is spot on in terms of tone. Chapters 3 through 5 showcase the full process of a woman being accused of being a witch and the trials that follow. I find this to be the most uncomfortable segment. After a wife's husband dies suddenly, his family blame a local woman of being a witch who caused his death, even though they have no proof. The church intervenes as inquisitors put this old woman through hell. She's stripped naked and searched, locked up and questioned for days, then, if she still denies it, she gets mentally and physically tortured further. You feel so sorry for her. It shows that no matter what, they're gonna get a confession out of her. It's just a matter of how long until she cracks. False confessions under duress are a common trope we understand now. You can physically or mentally torture someone for so long they'll admit to anything. But back then, these women who were falsely accused didn't stand a chance. It's unnerving to think how many poor souls had to endure this process. It does get more bizarre towards the end of it as it visualises the woman's confession birthing demons and displaying a show-stopping feat of special effects lighting up the screen as witches fly throughout the night and we see the rituals discussed earlier in the movie play out. These are highlights, with terrific prop work, unique set design and horrifying creatures roaming the screen. This demon that opens its arms to reveal a hallway the women come out of always stuck with me. It also features the most extreme scenes, with literal babies being slain and drained of their blood to be used in their rites. For 1922, this must have been shocking. It's true it was heavily censored at the time, but not as maniacally as you'd think. You also get a lineup of people kissing the devil on the butt, so that lightens the mood somewhat after the baby murder.
Oh my.
Chapter 5 introduces a twist in the narrative that I won't spoil, but let's just say it has a lot of guts and leaves a lingering dark note across the remainder of the movie. It further portrays the sheer cruelty and malice that underwent anything that even came slightly close to witchcraft. The final chapters 5 through 7 continue looking into the trials alleged witches went through, but is also more reflective on why and how all of this happened. It's much more focused on how torture was integral to getting confessions out of people, and relishes showing you the horrific medieval devices designed to elicit pain. The movie's aged look particularly works in this section for me. It really sends you back to these times with the tools on the wall rotted with rust and muck. The visuals are grimy, dark, and the camera moves through scenes of horror, leering over every grisly detail in their frames. Some sections come across like a plague-ridden Antiques Roadshow. We also get more scenes of our old pal Big S actively tormenting a group of nuns, which makes the last act a lot of fun, with contemplative shenanigans erupting and treating us to more bizarre visuals. But this is turning into a rundown of each scene in the film, and I'd like to keep some secrets for the movie to surprise you if you decide to journey into the past and experience it for yourself. For now, I'll just say that it ends on a suitably logical approach, theorising that things deemed witchcraft in the past would be considered illnesses or psychological ailments that we understand today. Personally, I think it also hints at the fact that women were forced into being seen as second-rate human beings due to a system commanded by men at the top, where male words are heeded much more than females. That Y chromosome sure did mean a lot across history, didn't it?
It's much harder to be a man than be a woman.
Häxan is an experience that ultimately shows how fucking dreadful being a woman was until recent times, and even now it's not spectacular. Whether young and beautiful or old and ugly, you weren't safe, and many ailments such as alcoholism, mental disorders, and good old-fashioned bitchiness, it could result in an accusation you were a witch. The sordid conditions they lived under, you could argue actually drove them to develop a lot of the conditions that would ultimately end up with them being persecuted for witchcraft. Then having to endure a slow, agonizing end to their life, surrounded by people hating you for something you're not. A modern day equivalent would be Hagasusa, A Heathen's Curse, which I also recommend you check out. It's remarkably progressive in modern thinking for the time, and as a staunch skeptic myself, I found all this mystifying in the best ways. It forwards the notion that all these strange beliefs of the past are just naive ways of thinking brought on from imaginative, if primitive people. It's an extremely pro-science movie, and with the medium shockingly barren of these types of films, this was so refreshing to see. I'm an atheist myself, and though I don't look down or think less of people who believe in man-made religions, I do believe religions as we know them today are essentially very successful cults. For instance, Scientology and Christianity are on the exact same level for me personally. The only reason Scientology receives so much criticism and flack for its fantastical and illogical beliefs today is because we can trace and see exactly how it came into being. With old world religions, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, they get away with it because they began so long ago and have had time to fester and grow without the advantages our society has today. Indoctrination is a remarkably powerful tool, and one that keeps people in a bubble and fearful of leaving that way of thinking. Having grown up devoutly Catholic, it took me a long time to fully embrace my current beliefs, but the freedom and joy I have now not being limited by and in fear of my chosen religion, I wouldn't trade for anything. See that little tangent I went off on there? The internal debate processing my own beliefs and outlook on life? That's just one little avenue your mind will wander down while watching this. Hell, other pieces of art that are even older conjure up emotions and discussion today, and they can be something as simple as a painting. Why should old movies be different? Nowadays, we have AI that can write a script for us, technology indistinguishable from reality, an army of businesses that can make anything happen. We should appreciate those who waded through obstacles in the past to allow us to thrive now. Over a century ago, Benjamin Christensen spent 2 years researching the topics. A year filming only at nighttime and then another year in post to create Häxan. It brought together dozens of actors, puppeteers, model makers, special effects artists, stop motion artists, musicians, technicians, and so much more for what someone could do today alone at home with some friends in a couple of months. Its distinct approach to narrative that informs as it entertains is unique. It's rich in creativity, as well as knowledge and discussion building opinion. These early auteurs broke ground no one had before. They ran through treacle so that today's filmmakers could walk across cotton. We should never forget these pieces of art that may look primitive, but still have a lot to say if you take the time to listen. For many people, a movie is something they'll stick on and hope it'll entertain them for a couple of hours before moving on to something else. But for those of us that recognise and have a passion for the craft, we see every detail and take in these fantastic worlds filled with emotion, thought-provoking themes, and potentially life-changing points of view. Art can be anything you want it to be, and if it's done well, it'll stand the test of time and be enjoyed by so many more people long after you're gone, and they'll take away things from it you might never have even considered while making it. It doesn't matter when a movie was made. In the artistic industry, age truly is just a number. Häxan is one of the most ambitious films of its era, mixing together a bounty of elements to give life to a masterpiece of horror. You may disagree with me, and you might simply find movies a nice distraction to escape life for a brief time. But even then, in those fleeting moments you're looking into the screen as it plays, I hope they take you somewhere that makes you think, reflect, smile, even cry. And then, once it ends and the credits play, whether good or bad, I hope it gets you talking to someone else about what it all meant to you.